Today I'm foraging on the farm that I grew up on, and it is a great place to go foraging because although the focus of the farm is obviously on cultivating things, there's lots of wild areas on the farm for me to explore and forage in. Not least the hedgerows around the fields, but also loads of grassy areas and little pockets of woodland that are just perfect for foraging. Like this area here, a nice area of grassy woodland, and there's loads of stuff around here to forage. I'm going to pick a load of nettles later, but I'm going to first of all pick for my salad some of this plant here, the goosegrass. I know it as cleavers. Lots of other people know it by lots of names like sticky weed, sticky bud, sticky willies, but its scientific name is Gallium aperine for the avoidance of confusion. And I'm just going to pick the young top bit of the plant. So I don't pick it all, I just pick for my salads the young top bit of the plant like that, because that's the youngest, softest, freshest bit. Now, even at this time of year, April, these young tops of the cleavers can start to develop a little bit of bitterness, and that does get worse as time goes on, which is why you'll never see me foraging for these once we're into May. And even in April, a lot of the plants, as I said, they can start to be already developing that bit of bitterness. But if you manage to catch them when they're still young enough, which you can in April still, you should find that they have a pleasant, mild flavour of garden peas without the bitterness, or at least without much bitterness. And as I've done videos on before, it's very good for you, and I find a perfectly pleasant and decent addition to a spring salad. As for the nettles, April's a great time to be picking nettles because they're all still young. Once you get into May, you can start to see them when they're starting to flower, and you do want to stop eating nettles once they go into flower, because some sources suggest that they can start to develop gritty particles called cystoliths, which can upset your urinary tract. Many people dispute that, but I always say no smoke without fire. Let's err on the side of caution and stick to that rule of not eating them once they go into flower. I actually think they taste nicer anyway before they flower, so when they're young. And as I said, April is the perfect time because they're all still young. And when I pick a nettle, I do normally wear gloves, by the way, but I do just harvest the young tops. So again, just the top bit of the nettle like that. That's where you get the youngest, freshest, nicest leaves. And obviously these won't be going into my salad, because if I just eat them like that, they'll sting my mouth. So I'm going to use these to make a nettle soup, which is delicious. And I have done a nettle soup recipe before if you want to check it out. If you did want to try a nettle leaf raw without stinging your mouth though, it is possible. You just get the leaf like that and you just need to kind of fold it up. You can do it in a way where you avoid getting stung. And then I just literally crush it into a ball. Some people that'll probably do, but I like to just give it a really good squeeze because again, I'm probably an overly cautious forager if anything, so I like to give it a really good squeeze just to make sure, and then once it's like that you can eat it because doing that destroys the sting. Off we go. I didn't quite like the flavour raw. It's very mild in flavour, sometimes reminds me a bit of cucumber, but ultimately it's a taste of its own. Very good for you, obviously raw, but it is just a little snack when I'm out for a walk. I obviously don't sit around putting them into little balls so that I can put them into salads or anything, but otherwise I'm always cooking with nettles because that destroys the sting. Just blanching it in water for a few seconds, a bit like you would spinach, is absolutely fine. That gets rid of the sting, but I'm going to use these, as I said, in a lovely, delicious, very healthy soup. I'm just round the back of the farmhouse now in a wild area, and we've got some wild garlic, so I'm going to pick some of this as well for my salad later. Also might make some more pesto. And of course the leaves are at their best at the moment before the plant has gone into flower, so March and April. Obviously it will flower probably sometime in April though, because you can see there the buds, so the flower buds already coming through of wild garlic, and you can eat all that as well, of course. The lovely flower stem, which is, I don't know if you can see there, it's triangular-ish in nature, and the flower bud on top, of course, which is even stronger in flavour than the leaves themselves. So these are great in many ways, but today it's just going to be part of my spring salad. And down here we've got few flowered garlic, which is another wild plant in the Allium genus. This one's actually invasive, nowhere near as common as wild garlic, but when you do find it, you do find big patches of it like there is here around the back of this farmhouse, because it spreads rapidly. But although it's a bit more, maybe a slightly more oniony than garlicky, it does still have some garlicky vibes as well, and you can use it pretty much like you would wild garlic. And if you look there, I'll try and get it into focus, I might need my hand to do so. You can see that the flowers they produce, they leave behind some very small little what we call bulbils as well. And you can use those just like you would garlic cloves. They're nowhere near as strong, but you can use them in a similar way. Or you can just literally just eat them in a salad for a bit of a crunch. But yeah, I'm going to pick some of these for the salad as well. You can eat the leaves as well of that plant, but obviously, in my opinion, they're not as nice, but they also look quite similar to the leaves of things like bluebells, which you obviously don't want to be eating. So personally, I much prefer the actual flower stem. Here we've got hawthorn, often found in a hedge. And these young leaves here are very good for you. They don't taste of much, they have a little bit of flavour if you give them a hard enough chew, but I normally just add them into salads because they're quite inoffensive, you barely know that they're there. They don't add much flavour, but they do add some health benefits. They are packed with flavonoid antioxidants and are just generally good for your all-round cardiovascular system, including things like helping lower blood pressure and cholesterol. This one here in the hedge back divides opinion. This is garlic mustard. And these are quite good for a salad unless you hate it, because some people actually do hate the flavour of this plant. I fall into the camp of actually just not minding it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I just don't mind it. And what I do quite like is a few in a salad because it does have quite a big punchy flavour. I don't like too many in the salad, but certainly a few leaves I find works quite well. As with most plants, the younger the leaves, the better. But you can eat any of them. They're all reasonably young when they're on this plant here, growing as a low growing rosette. But obviously ones like that, where it's a bit more of a bright shiny green and just feels a bit softer, almost a bit curled up as well, that's even younger than that one, for example. These flowers here are actually the flowers of what we call a dead nettle. There are various species of dead nettles with different coloured flowers, but I mention them because they're actually quite nice sometimes. You can find them if you find them on a sunny day with a bit of nectar in them. They can even have a little bit of sweetness, but regardless, they're edible and they can add a bit of colour to your salad. But most of the dead nettles haven't actually flowered yet, so I'm going to leave these for the bees, of course, as well. But it is a very common plant, so when it is fully in flower, no harm in taking a few to decorate a salad. And dead nettles, they're actually a member of the mint family, I believe. And so like all members of the mint family, they have this square stem. And of course they're called dead nettles because they look a little bit like nettles, but they don't sting you. This stuff down here is ground elder. Now ground elder is a member of the carrot family, which of course contains a couple of the very deadly toxic species in the wild, like hemlock and hemlock water dropwort. There's one called fool's parsley as well, which is not as common as those two, sorry, not as deadly as those two, I should say, but still very toxic. And thankfully, this one, ground elder, although it's in the same family, doesn't actually look like any of those very toxic species. So it's a pretty safe one to actually forage. Obviously, if you do forage it yourself in the wild, you should still do your due diligence and use multiple sources to get a positive ID. But the point is, it's not as bad as some in the carrot family when it comes to identifying safely. And it's really common. Gardeners hate it because it takes over gardens and can be very difficult to get rid of as well. But it's actually nice and edible. But in my opinion, it is only nice and edible when it's very young, like these kind of shoots here, these kind of leaves. So if you can see that up close, you can see how the leaves are quite curled up. They're very young, probably not the best lighting. I'll try and, it's quite bright and sunny today, can't quite get it into focus. There you go. So the leaves are still a bit curled, they look a bit more of a bright green kind of colour, and that's when they're at their best. So when they're like that, they're good as a parsley substitute, much milder in flavour than parsley, but still quite nice. And you can also eat them raw in salads, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this and a few of these into my basket for the salad. And when you eat these raw, quite a pleasant flavour. I get a real burst of flavour initially. It doesn't last that long, but the initial burst of flavour is very pleasant, I think. But just to reiterate, all of the ones around here are very young because of the time of year we're in. So they're all okay to eat raw, but even better than one like this, which is just starting to unfurl its leaves, are the ones when it's like that, when the leaves are very curled up and they just look a bit more of a bright green colour as opposed to more of a dull matte green like those. So hopefully when I put them side by side you can see the difference. Hidden away down here is this plant here, which is common sorrel. Common sorrel is technically, you could call it mildly toxic, but if I was calling it mildly toxic, I'd also have to say things like spinach and rhubarb are mildly toxic because it contains oxalic acid. In reality, it is perfectly safe to eat for most of us. If you've got kidney stones or gout, you wouldn't want to eat this plant in the same way that you wouldn't want to eat things like spinach and rhubarb. But if you don't have conditions like kidney stones or gout, this is perfectly safe to eat, like spinach and rhubarb is, in the normal quantities that you would eat it in. It's got a lovely citrusy, kind of sour, zesty flavour, and so very good in a salad to give it that kind of edge. You can eat the stems as well, by the way, so I like to chuck it all into a salad. And here we've got dandelion, so I'll take a few of these leaves as well. They can be quite bitter, dandelion leaves, but they're very good for you. And I do find in spring, like where we are now, they're not too bitter. Sometimes I can even eat them and not really get any bitterness. So very palatable and nice to put into a salad. I do like the texture of them, nice crunch to them and a bit of juiciness. So I can happily put this in a salad, get the health benefits, and it will still be a very nice salad. So there we go, that'll do for me for now. A nice little selection. This is just a salad for the two of us. And obviously we've got some nice wild garlic. We've got the few flowered garlic and the flowers just down there. We've got the dandelion leaves. We've got the ground elder, the parsley-esque substitute. We've got the common sorrel just there. We've got the garlic mustard there. We've got some hawthorn leaves down here mixed in by the look of it as well, with some of the cleavers tops as well. So quite a good mixture. I never like to have too many different species in my salad, so I don't want to go overboard. That will do today.